everybody. Welcome to Agile Parent Entrepreneur. This is Melinda Chan. Today, I'm speaking with Jason Van Orden. He is the co-founder of Internet Business Mastery, one of the most profitable business podcasts on iTunes. And he's also helped over 5,000 people starting their internet businesses. So we got a lot of things to talk about niche markets and to monetizing your products and services. Well, Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Melinda.
Yeah, I feel like I want to say bonjour or bienvenue because you spent last year living in Paris with your wife and daughter, right?
Yeah, spent a whole year. That was a big dream that we have had ever since. My wife and I have been married about 15 years. And when we got engaged 15 years ago, we were dreaming about all the places that we could live someday. And Paris was right up there at the top of the list. Had no idea how we were going to make that happen. At the time, I wasn't even an entrepreneur yet, but it worked out great. We actually had the perfect opportunity to go and spend an entire year there with just me, my wife, and my 3-year-old daughter. It was fantastic.
Wow. And I mean, you're practically living the dream for a lot of parent entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs to be able to decide on where you want to go and still build your career at the same time. You were a musician before, so why don't you just share the journey from being a musician to an entrepreneur?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, music was a big passion of mine, but at the same time, I wanted to get a good career and do, the whole going to university and get a solid degree. So I studied guitar and engineering at the same time. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated, I went and got what I thought was going to be a dream job. It was an engineering job, writing software for a company that made gear for guitarists. So when you see guitarists on stage and they're hitting those pedals and it's making cool sounds on their guitar, I was working for a company that did that. The problem is it was still just a job in a cubicle. And so after a couple of years, it really lost its luster. And I found myself really searching and wondering, is there something else? And especially when every Sunday I would get that dreaded feeling in my gut that, I got to go back to work tomorrow again. And I thought, is there just maybe I just needed to grow up or something. Maybe I just hadn't adapted to adult life yet. Thankfully, I started reading some books, one of which was the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that opened up my mind to wait, there's this whole other path outside of the status quo. And really, if you want to build wealth and freedom, you need to go a route like owning a business and being an entrepreneur, if at all possible, or at least being some kind of investor. And so that's what I started immediately pursuing. As soon as I finished that book, I'm like, that's it. I'm unemployable. And started. And, at the time, we were really serious about being musicians, but we started realizing that, for the family life that we wanted to have, we knew we wanted to have kids. And we started seeing that a lot of the bands that we looked up to, it took several years for them to really make the kind of career that allowed it to be self-sustaining. And when we thought about being a parent on the road with a kid or two kids, it just wasn't jiving these two different visions of lifestyle that we had for ourselves. And so it became clear that music wasn't the path to freedom and that we needed to start some kind of business. But the good thing that did come out of being a musician is I learned that I loved marketing and that I was good at marketing. And so that really kind of led me a little bit, that was just one of those key stepping stones towards the path of becoming a successful entrepreneur on the internet. I like to say I learned a lot of lessons of how to run a business from being a musician first.
It is a business, though. I mean, my husband is a musician, too, and it's a serious business, very competitive business, though.
Yeah, just because you make great music doesn't mean people are going to show up to your gigs and buy your CDs.
No. Yeah. So when you started your podcast, did you do the research and did you know that this is this upcoming niche market?
Yeah, so there was a few different steps that led me to that. So I pursued investing first as a real estate investor, and that really wasn't a good fit for me. And this does come around to the podcasting thing. But what I did learn when I was pursuing the real estate investing, I ended up as a member of this local club or meetup for other investors, because I think one of the most important things you can do when you're pursuing a dream that's outside of the status quo is to find other people to associate with who are also pursuing that same dream. And as it turns out, real estate investing wasn't a very good fit for me. I just my strengths. I'm not one of those deal makers. I don't like being on the phone a lot. It just wasn't. It wasn't a match to my strengths. But I did start noticing that it was very natural for me to give lots of marketing advice to my real estate investor friends. And so I was always teaching them ideas about how to get leads for, buyers and sellers of houses that they could then put together these deals and turn them into cash flowing properties and things like that. And so this led eventually to me going, okay, I can see that my strength here is more in like some kind of teaching or consulting. So I started looking for more opportunities in that. And that led to a discovery of what's often referred to as information marketing, or this idea that you can take your knowledge and package it in coaching programs, consulting services, courses, seminars, workshops, things like that. And so this light bulb started going off of, well, maybe that's what I need to do. And as I was talking to my friends who were real estate investors and realizing that they really valued my insights about how to market, I started seeing this match between my strengths and my knowledge and this pain of a specific market and how I could solve that. And so soon what I did is, I'll kind of make a long story short. I ended up creating a course and putting together a seminar where a bunch of these local friends paid to have a whole day of learning marketing fundamentals with me. And at the end of that seminar, I had this package. I had recorded CDs and a notebook of all my slides. This was 2003, so things were still not quite digital online as big of a deal, right? And I was able to sell about 25 or 30 of these to just people I knew locally, right? So I was like, this light bulb went off about, okay, this is it. Information marketing is for me. The problem is I had maxed out my market, which was this local group of people that I had earned their trust by helping them out with marketing. And that's when I discovered internet marketing and realized if I can learn to market myself online, then I can reach people outside of my immediate local sphere of influence. And that's how I could start scaling out this business and selling more of this package deal, this recorded one-day seminar about marketing specifically for real estate investors. And so over time, I was starting to learn internet marketing. And that's when one day in 2005, podcasting popped up on my radar. And I just kind of, the tech geek in me, the marketer in me, the teacher in me just got really excited and projected forward and thought, you know what, this podcasting thing could be really significant. I can see a lot of people coming to this medium to reach their audience and to market their services or their businesses. And when those people want to start podcasts, I thought I want to be the one to be able to teach them how to do that. But that meant I needed to start 2 or 3 podcasts of my own. And so that's exactly what I did is I started a handful of podcasts to start, because it was very early, like very few people were doing it.
Yeah.
And so I had to dive in and just start doing it. And I started one, which is Internet Business Mastery, which is my primary business now. I didn't know at the time that that's what was going to happen. I started one about my life in New York City, which was just kind of for fun. I enjoyed talking about what it's like to live in New York City. And then I started one that was all about podcasting and this journey as I discovered what worked and what didn't work. I had a podcast that would just share those insights with people. And so that's when I kind of went all in on podcasting in the end of 2005. And since then, it's grown to be a very significant part of my brand and my business and what I do today.
Yeah. And then, you also coach helping people start their own internet businesses. And what would you say to those people? What would be the research you should do to start to find your niche market?
So a lot of times this turns into a stumbling block, looking for your niche. People get hung up on what are the right keywords that I need to find, or they get hung up on thinking, well, I got to know what my product is that I'm going to sell. And that really slows people down. It can end up costing them months of time not taking action. And so what I find is really helpful is to rather than getting hung up on these other things, is to just simply think about, who is the audience that I most want to connect with? Who can I do my best work with? Who would I be fascinated and interested in helping with whatever their struggles and roadblocks? And that might be parents, that might be entrepreneurs, that might be tennis players, that might be people trying to lose weight. And I think it's good to really niche down and get more specific. But if you think about, for instance, the story I told earlier, that's exactly what I was doing when I didn't realize it at the time. But by going to these meetings every week and getting to know real estate investors who were my colleagues and peers at the time and having conversations with them, I was starting to develop a market for myself. And I was just paying attention to, well, what are the struggles that they're sharing most with me? And when they started saying things like, well, I'm having a hard time finding buyers and sellers to put my deals together, that's where I started going, this is a stumbling block for them that I think I can help them with. And so I didn't even know at the time that I was going to create a product. I didn't know what that product was going to be, but I was just getting out there and talking to the audience that I wanted to help most. So I think that's a great place to start with any business. If you just dive in and go, okay, you know what, I'm going to help mothers who are trying to stay fit while they're pregnant and then lose the weight afterwards. Like that's a nice specific audience. And you just go, whether online or locally at meetups, you just start connecting with that audience and asking questions and being curious about their experience. Or maybe it's golfers, and so you get really specific. Is it beginning golfers? Is it golfers who have a lot of experience and are looking at like improving their putting game? Or like when it comes to entrepreneurs, there's all kinds of sub things there. Like you very specifically are helping parents who are entrepreneurs, right? And so if you just start connecting with that audience and asking them, what are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest aspirations? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish? What's holding you back? How can I best help you? That's when things just kind of naturally start unfolding. And next thing you know, you do have a business. You do know the topics and solutions and things that then make up what I think a lot of people think of as the niche idea that you have to have in order to be successful.
And would you recommend people during this process to test whether it is going to be a profitable niche market, or what are the things you should consider?
Yeah, so in order to make sure it's going to be a profitable idea, I think the first thing is to get down niche enough, and that might seem counterintuitive because people are thinking, well, the more specific I get, the smaller the audience potentially is. But when you first start out, it's a lot easier to stand out when you are getting very, very specific and hitting dead on to the wants and desires of that very specific audience, right? So, if somebody shows up and says, well, I am the health and fitness expert for mothers who are pregnant, a mother who's out there Googling or on Facebook or Twitter looking for insights about that specific thing, like when they see somebody say that, they're going to go, aha, this is the person for me to help me. The second thing to make sure that you're going after a profitable idea is just ask yourself, okay, is there an urgent pain or some kind of just like rabid desire that I can help this market with? So they have to be really hungry for something, and it's very important to them to fulfill or solve some kind of specific problem. And then the big key question to ask is, okay, are they aware of that problem? Are they actively looking for a solution? And then the real kicker, are they willing to spend money to solve it, right? Because there's definitely those things out there that you might be able to help people with, but in the end, they're not willing to spend a whole lot of money in order to get the solution. So one easy way to know is there money in the market is to look out there in the marketplace and say, well, are there other people selling to this audience that I want to help? And if there are other people out there selling ebooks, or you go to Udemy and you see their courses for that audience, or you go to, you do some Googling and see if there are ebooks or online digital training or coaching for that audience. Any of these are good indicators that there is money to be made in that market. If people are advertising to the market, if there's a magazine for the market, if there's a conference or a professional organization of some sort, all of these things are indicators that there is money to be made. Otherwise, nobody would be there, spending money and time creating a brand. So it's kind of the old adage of, if you want to find the gold, you go where the gold has already been found. Mm-hmm. And you don't worry about the competition. Competition in this case is actually a very good indicator that there's a healthy market. And there are other ways to stand out and beat the competition.
So now, we've got the niche market. And how do you decide? Because on the internet, there are so many products. We're talking about, you mentioned it, about courses, ebooks, and even magazines. How do you really monetize? What kind of product to offer, especially for yourself? How do you decide what kind of product to first target to monetize your product or expertise?
Mm-hmm. Well, the answer is that you ask your audience what it is that they want. You can get really hung up on a specific product idea and what you think that they want, or maybe what you would be really excited to make. But the truth is, the best thing to do is, we've talked about finding the audience and talking to them and identifying their biggest pain or their biggest, desire or passion that you can help them with. And then you can ask additional questions like, okay, well, if I were to, if you could wave a magic wand right now and have any result when it comes to your health, when it comes to your business, when it comes to your parenting, what would that be? And you ask them, well, what with those big roadblocks you're running into, what do you think would best help you to overcome that? And this, you're kind of zeroing in on what kind of solution you might offer. And then you can even start getting specific to, well, okay, I have an idea of the solution you might want. What format would you prefer that take? Like, are you looking for some kind of a coaching program? Would you rather have some kind of ebook to go through at your own pace? Do you want video multimedia tutorials? Would you like to go to an in-person workshop? And you have these conversations. And if you talk to a handful of people who fit your target audience and have these conversations about their pains and their desires and how you can best help them, then it's going to emerge in the feedback that they give you as to what kind of product you ideally can make that they will be eager to buy from you because you've done your research. And I think one of the best things you can do early on, very, very first, is just try to get one coaching client. And that might seem like, well, I want to build a scalable business, and one-on-one coaching isn't very scalable because I only have so many hours in the day. But when you're first starting a business, I think there's so much value in having even just a couple coaching clients, and maybe even at a discount if you need to get those first people in the door and doing business with you. But the reason why is there's going to be a huge boost in your confidence when you're able to help these people. You get feedback from them as to what they need most. When you give insights, you'll see how excited they get. They'll go put it into action. They'll come back and share their wins with you. They'll share the stumbling blocks that they ran into. And at the end of this process, you're going to have clarity. You're going to have confidence. You're going to have a testimonial. And you'll be able to maybe take those ideas and insights that you got from working one-on-one with somebody and now turn it into some kind of online program, whether that's a membership site or ebook or something else. So it's all about that exploration and trying things and having an open dialogue with your audience, and then it just kind of organically and iteratively starts unfolding because you're trying different things and adjusting as you go.
Oh, that's a great idea. And I mean, I talk to a lot of parent entrepreneurs, and a lot of people would say that it's complicated starting a business, and especially with the kids. And then you got a young daughter as well, and people will always say, "I don't have time. It's just too much commitment and too much of investments." And what's your advice to those parent entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, anything that is worthwhile, as they say, is going to take some work. I mean, I think you have to ask yourself. I mean, I think what people really are afraid of is it comes down to one of two things. Either they don't have confidence. Okay, they either don't think that they are deserving of additional success. Okay, so this is like really getting down at roots, stuff. And so often, like these things that manifest as I don't have time, I don't have the money, I don't have the connections. Really, what it's coming down to is either a belief that you deserve to have more success, or that you have the ability to bring that success about for yourself. Yeah. And the truth is, like, everybody has enough time. We all have the same amount of time. I think I don't have enough time is really just an excuse. That comes down to priorities. What you got to think about is, well, okay, so these are priorities. What are my priorities? What is most important to me? And if having that freedom in your life is important, then you got to decide, okay, well, what are the mindset shifts that I need to make? What are the sacrifices I might have to make in order to make this to bring this about and make it happen. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It is a process of learning. I remember when I first came out of my job as an employee, there was this huge learning curve of how to think like a self-driven entrepreneur that had to decide every day, well, what am I going to focus on? What are the most important things to put into action? And I had to be patient with that process and allow myself to stumble a bit and figure that out. But I think that consistency is one of the most important things.
Yes.
When you first start out, don't worry as much about, am I getting the perfect results? Am I getting the biggest results? Am I doing the exact right thing? I think the most important thing you can do when you're first striking out as an entrepreneur is just show up consistently. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're starting an online business, or you're wanting to make an online brand, or whatever that case may be. Every day you just set a goal to sit down and do one thing. And it may even be just, okay, I'm just going to find 5 minutes to sit down and write one sentence of a blog post. And that might seem really, really silly, but there's this amazing power in consistency. And if you do that, this is called a tiny habit. And it's studied by a professor at Stanford by the name of B.J. Fogg. And he talks about how powerful it is to change our thinking and our behavior by adopting tiny habits. If you want to read more, great. Just set a goal in the morning. Say, well, as soon as I wake up and I grab my coffee or I get my glass of water or whatever, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read one sentence. And again, that seems silly, but after 30 days of this tiny habit, you're going to find a tipping point, because what you're doing is you're laying down the pathways of your brain thinking and behaving a different way. rather than the habitual, if you think about it, so much of our lives is a habit, and it's really hard to change those habits. But by being consistent early on, you start laying down the pathways, and then you can stack on top of that the results. At some point, you go from writing one sentence to writing 500 words. At one point, you start, you go from reading one sentence to reading an entire chapter, or 3 chapters, or 5 chapters. You go from, just writing one sentence to actually putting an entire blog post out. And so by showing up consistently, starting with tiny habits, and bit by bit then transitioning to, okay, now I want to go for results and impact, you're going to find that you ease yourself into that in a sustainable way, into the success driving habits that entrepreneurs need to form to be to reach the goals that they're looking for.
No, yeah, that's amazing, because so that's exactly why we decided to call this this project as Agile Parent Entrepreneur, because it's all about just small actionable actions that that we can produce, especially being a parent entrepreneur. We have so many things going on with our life, and to just focus on those small actions. And that's I think that's the most useful way. So what's the most important action for you? Activities that produce the most result for you or your business?
Yeah, sure. So every day I'd say there's a handful of things that I try to do, at least one small thing in each of these different areas. One of them is connecting with my audience. So that might be having a conversation with somebody in person to gain those insights we talked about earlier. It might be going inside the Facebook group that I've started, where I've started as a community and a place for my audience to interact with each other and for me to interact with them. So these are like small, or going on Twitter and interacting with them there. So I do something to connect and relate with my audience. And this is really important for building up that trust and relationships that then allow you to actually have an impact in their lives and, sell to them once you're ready for that. The other thing I try to do every day is gain some kind or put some raw fuel into my mind that help me come up with the ideas that drive essentially my business. Because in the end, I'm selling ideas, I'm selling information, I'm selling knowledge. And in order to have that, I need to fill my brain with interesting ideas and knowledge that then I filter through my own experience, I filter through my own voice, and then I can put back out there in a nice, digestible way that my audience appreciates and follows me for. So that means, reading good books. That means spending some time listening to good podcasts or audiobooks every day. And even if even if you're just starting with a consistent, show up every day for 5 minutes and listen to something that's good and meaningful and inspiring, that's a great place to start. But giving yourself that raw fuel is important. Another thing that's really important for me to do then is to create some kind of value. So whether that's writing a rough draft or writing a few hundred words for a blog post, whether that's outlining or recording a podcast. So creating some kind of content or something for a course that I'm going to put out there in the world that's either going to be attracting traffic for me or something that I'm going to sell eventually. So essentially what I'm saying here is it's important to create every day, it's important to connect every day, and then it's important as well to consume. But when I say consume, be very thoughtful and deliberate about that consumption of thoughts that and content that you're doing. And I think if you do each of those things, that starts leading to the habits that build up to the point where you do have a successful business.
Well, I feel like just talking to you, I got so many ideas, and I'm literally consuming right now. So that's awesome. I'm just going to ask you some standard question, more personal question, because I'm sure we all just want to know about you as Jason.
Sure.
What's your zone of genius? What's really good at, and how you outsource the rest?
So the two things that I am really, really good at, I'm good at learning very, very quickly. I like digesting a lot of information. I love reading lots of books. I read about a book a week. And I love doing research. So when something fascinates me, when I'm really curious about it, I dive in and do very, very deep research. And not everybody's like that. It's important to know these things about yourself. Are you the person who goes and does a lot of research? Are you the person who needs just a little bit to get started? And both have their strengths. Both are very valid. I'm definitely a deep dive person. And then I'm very good at seeing the correlations between information and where the systems and the common threads lie, such that I can organize that information, combine things in interesting ways, and then put that back out there in a very digestible way for my particular audience. So it comes down to being a teacher, somebody who shares knowledge and resources, and that's what I do best. And so anything I can do to create teams and systems that allow me to focus as much of my time on that certainly helps me to make a greater impact and grow my business more quickly. So things like sales copywriting and design and bookkeeping and editing my podcast and editing my writing and all that kind of stuff, these are things that I outsource to other people.
Mm-hmm. And what's your top secret for a habitable lifestyle, a balanced lifestyle between your daughter, your family, and your work?
I think it's important to have that list of things that are the must-haves, the ones that are not that you can't that you won't compromise, and to be very thoughtful and deliberate about that. Sometimes I admit I'll see, let's say somebody get asked to do some kind of like amazing interview on TV, or let's say that they get I don't know, just they get some kind of awesome opportunity to work with like Richard Branson or somebody. And like, if this is somebody I know, I might, or that they're getting lots and lots of speaking gigs. And the point I'm getting at is that then I'll start comparing myself to that, so if this is one of my peers, I'll start comparing myself to that person and going, well, why don't I have that? Why haven't I done all the things? And I turn it on myself. I go, well, that I must have not done along the way the right things in order for me to have that opportunity. And this is a very non-useful, non-helpful way of thinking. But what I have to stop and think is like, if I made, like, for instance, there were a lot of speaking gigs last year. I didn't have hardly any speaking gigs. And sometimes I would see some of my peers doing these speaking gigs and going, oh man, I wish I had those. But then I realized, oh wait, I'm living in Paris, France. Like, that was the decision I made, right? Yeah. I decided that was what was most important for me and my family right now, was to have that experience. And that meant, because I don't want to be constantly flying back to the States, and it's at least a day of travel there and a day of travel back. And so I'm away from my family and my daughter, so understanding like, well, the must have is that, I want to be able to have a certain amount of time with my family and connect with my daughter every day as much as possible. Yeah. And, and at that time, the must have for me was that enriching cultural experience in Paris, France, and just being clear about that. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like knowing what your vision is, knowing that you can't have it all because there's an opportunity cost and you're going to have to say no to things, and being okay saying no to those things, and then allowing yourself to free yourself of the comparison and the, oh, I got to have it all kind of attitude, or that fear of missing out, and just knowing that it's like, no, trusting yourself is like, these are the 2 or 3 things that are most important. And that means the other things can wait, or I just won't have them at all. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm. And what's your top tools in your toolbox?
Top tools. I mean, there's a lot of things that notes. I could name, but what's that?
The way you jot on notes, or
sure. So some things that I use every day. I use Evernote every day. That's a digital brand for me. In fact, right before this interview, I was out for a walk, and I was reading, listening to something and looking at some stuff on my phone. And several ideas came to me, and so I immediately captured those ideas in Evernote. So, as far as like pieces of information, ideas that come to me, swipe file of copy headlines and email newsletters, subject lines, and things like that I like I keep all of that inside of Evernote. So that's something I definitely use on a daily basis. A tool that is really helpful to me lately as well is something called Coach.me. And Coach.me allows you to track your daily habits. So speaking of the things that are the most important to you, it's important to me that I read every day. It's important to me that I meditate every day. It's important to me that I make my bed in the morning, because I feel like that just sets a nice tone for me. Like, I'm doing, the things that, I'm starting my day deliberately. And I just have a list of these little things. And it's a social network for connecting with people around habits and daily tasks that you want to accomplish. And then you can if you want to connect to coaches. That's why it's called Coach.me. I don't use it for that aspect, but that's a tool I use every day. I use the Calm app on my iPhone. That's a meditation app, and there's a lot of guided meditations. I find that really, really helpful. I use Asana, ASANA, and that's a task management for my team. So I have a couple employees in the Philippines. I've got freelancers and vendors that I work with, a business partner. and everything stays organized and all the communication put together because we put everything in Asana as far as like tasks and things like that. So that's, my Google Calendar, obviously, I'm a big fan of scheduling things in, the most important things that need to happen every day, scheduling them in, my writing time, even my reading time, if at all possible. So there's a handful of like on a daily basis of tools that I use to keep my life running.
All right. Well, I think I've got a lot of notes here, and then they are going into my Evernote. So,
Nice.
yeah, but I would like to thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you do provide coaching, so we'll put the information about your program here, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk to you again and to pick your brains again.
Sure.
All
Sure
right.
thing.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, for your time.
Thanks, Melinda.
Bye.